Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Joe Davis, who's here to share with us his Nautilus award-winning book, The Generous Leader: 7 Ways to Give of Yourself for Everyone's Gain. So is it possible to lead with heart in a high-performance workplace and still win? Well, today's guest is here to share with us just that. Joe Davis served as Managing Director and Senior Partner at BCG. In The Generous Leader, Joe shares a performance review. He was told he was not the best at problem-solving solo, but with others, he could solve any challenge. His manager identified his key strength, a person who could connect. Joe spent 37 years with BCG, co-founded the Washington, D.C. office, led office systems, started BCG's NA public sector business, led BCG North America, founded and chaired BCG's Center for Inclusion and Equity. Joe earned his BA from Whitman College and his MBA from HBS. Joe is currently serving his second term as Whitman's board chair. So welcome to the show, Joe Davis.
Thanks, Marianne. Thank you very much.
Well, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about your Nautilus award-winning book. Congratulations, by the way. I mean, what a huge accomplishment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Why don't we just dive in? I mean, what inspired you to write this book, and why is this so important today?
Well, those are two different questions. I'll be careful not to. So, why I wrote it? First off, I ran BCG North America, Boston Consulting Group it's a consulting firm during COVID times, and those were interesting times for leaders across everywhere, as you know. And afterwards, a number of my colleagues said, "Joe, you should really write a book about leadership." And they wanted to hear about that time. It's funny, I got a lot of words written very quickly, sent it to Harvard Press, in fact, and the editor read it. She said, "Well, I read it, and I even had tears at times, but no book." So what do you mean? She goes, "Nobody will want to read about COVID by the time we get the book out." So I thought, well, that's interesting. So I changed it, expanded more of my work experience, and interviewed a number of executives about their experience. So partly some people asked me to write it. Another thing, though, that was quite meaningful to me is, there's a lot of business books, and you probably know, I think the average business book sells 247 copies, I was told. And, if Brené Brown and Adam Grant sell 1 million, that means the rest of us sell whatever. So I thought, wow, is this worth the effort? And I had a colleague say, "Joe, if you move 8 people to think differently about their leadership and maybe, step it up a bit or become more of a quote unquote generous leader, it'll be worth the effort." So that's what I think really inspired me, is a chance to share my message with whomever, will engage with me. Others can engage with Adam Grant, others can engage with Brené Brown, Rachel Scott, you can go on and on, but, we'll all touch different people. Now, the idea of a generous leader, why is this important today? It's going to be more important today, as we all know, but we won't go into current events. I mean, I define generous leader first, to be really clear, and first to be very clear. This is not about just being nice. A leader does have to get results. You don't get results, you don't have a job as a leader. But I define a generous leader as one who gives of themselves freely, without expectation of direct personal benefit, to help others, to ensure others grow, develop, and thrive at their full potential. And when people are humming at their full potential, quite frankly, as a leader, you hum at your full potential because your team does better, your organization does better, etc. So that's, to me, is what really is a generous leader. Now, one of the key aspects of it is you bring your human self to work, and you lead from the heart, and you see that the people that work with you are humans, not just cogs in the wheel of the work world. And, why is that important? That, I think, has changed. Some people said, "Oh, Joe, isn't this just the young people have different expectations and they'll grow up and get mortgages and et cetera, and they'll all go back?" I don't think so. I think the change began, quite frankly, with the BlackBerry. With all of a sudden, you could be on 24/7, and then the phone just pushed, the smartphone pushed it further. Social media added an element of, of life flooding at us. And then COVID, of course, completely blurred our work life, so that now people really are bringing their human self to work, or they're doing work from their human, from the personal side, from their home. So the days of separating and being like, you remember, IBM's a great company, but white shirt, blue suit, cog in the wheel, those days are over. People want and need to bring their human self to work, and they expect to see some humanity out of their leaders. That's why it's important. And they want to then, they will therefore follow those leaders. And so it's obviously important. You need people to follow you and deliver with you as a leader.
I think it was such great advice you got about publishing this book. I found it to be such a profound read. You talk about leading from the heart. What does that look like?
Well, that's a big question. I think for me, it really means, and it's just, I didn't think about how I operated. Do you really care? It doesn't have to be like you care about your child, but do you really care about your team, the employees that work, the people who work for you, and them thriving at their full potential? And that, care, I believe, comes from the heart, right? And that's really, so that is coming from the heart, that you really care and want them to grow and develop. And then there's some, I won't go through all, but then there's some things that come with that. You really work to connect personally and deeply with people and understand where they're coming from. And if you want to make sure you're sharing messages, you know what they're hearing, and it's not just a matter of let me just pontificate what I think from my brain. That's an example. I mean, I can go through other examples of what it looks like. I mean, I'll tell another one. I use the word generous inclusion, and I don't mean that in this context as DE&I. That's very important. We can talk about that separately, but I do mean that a real leader includes people across the organization, up and down the organization, engages with them, listens to them, asks them questions, not just hangs out with their own, team of, whatever, their own executive team and get told what they want to hear. But you really broaden your reach, and you connect with those people truly from your heart with a real interest in learning what they know that you don't know. So those are examples of what I mean by it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that with us. How has your personal journey shaped the generous leader model that you've outlined in your book?
Well, I could go on with stories forever and ever, but I will tell you two. I mean, one is my first job was as a Procter and Gamble salesperson or sales rep. After college, I sold shampoo and toothpaste, Head and Shoulders and Crest and the like, in and out of grocery stores, trying to convince a store manager to put my product on display was the main thing I did. I was in the management track. I promoted after a couple of years and had a team of 3 people. The two of them were 40 plus. I thought, my gosh, they're really old guys now. 40 ain't that old, but when you're 24, it's pretty old, or 25. It's interesting. I would ride with them every couple of weeks. I would never give any feedback. Quite frankly, I was afraid. What does this 24-year-old kid know that he can tell that person? And who am I to tell him, et cetera, et cetera? But it's funny, at the end of the year, I was writing one of the person's review, wrote down everything I saw they might do differently over the year. And I started to launch into the review, and I got maybe 2 minutes in. And this fellow's name was Rich. He said, "What the blank, Joe? What the heck, Joe? You ride with me every 2 weeks, and you've never told me any of this? What are you doing here?" And I can't remember. I, of course, was mortified. I think I froze. But it was a powerful lesson. I don't care if you're 24 or whatever, the role of a leader is to help grow and develop people. And it's interesting because that person didn't see me as some young whippersnapper. He might have, but he was also interested in hearing what I had to say to him and how he might get better. He really was interested in it. And my fear was not his problem. So that's one story where it really shaped my view that my role as a leader is to help others develop and grow. And I got to get past my own fears if that's what's in the way. Another quick story was when I started working with Boston Consulting Group, BCG, I had agreed to open the Washington office coming down from Boston with my colleague and mentor. And when I had moved my family down to Washington already from Boston, and he and I were on a plane to a client. And I remember he leaned over and said, "Oh, Joe, I got to tell you something. I got an offer to be president of a company." And I remember I thought, what, like, what the heck? I moved my family. We're going to Washington. Oh my. But I like, oh, well, that's great. That's great, Steve. Real happy for you. He said, no, 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 don't worry, Joe. There's a lot of puts and takes, but I've thought hard about this. You and Sarah have moved. I've made the commitment to you. We are going to move down there. We're going to open that office. It's going to be a great office. So, what an example of someone who really has your back, who took, he said to me 30 years later, well, there were other reasons too. However, the fact that he wasn't going to turn his back on Sarah and me in that moment, Sarah's my wife, in that moment meant a lot to me. And that shaped a lot of, I've always had a view that whose back do you have? And always thought about whose backs do I have, in the work world. So those are two stories. Really give feedback. Don't be afraid to grow and develop people, and have people's backs. It'll make a real difference to them. Those are two that have shaped my journey, at least.
Those are some profound stories. Thank you for taking the time to share those with us. So, what does it mean to be a compassionate leader?
Well, I didn't. It's funny because I didn't use the word compassionate in my title. You can read up empathetic, compassionate, etc. And there's true definitions to those words that I'm not sure always fit. But what I think really it means is to be one who sees your teams as humans, as people who want to do well. And generally, I think most people want to do well, who want to grow, who want to develop, and you are going to spend some time and show the respect to help them do that. Whether it be, as we talked about, by helping them grow, whether it be by, giving a pat on the back when it's the right moment, whether it be sharing a part of your human self, sharing some of your own fears. If people are blocked and you share, well, I'm blocked too, kind of unlocks people. So I think that's really what compassionate leader is about, is really caring about your team growing and thriving. Doesn't mean you always have to be nice. Doesn't mean you're not going to give tough feedback. Doesn't mean sometimes someone may not fit in a role that has to change. But that's all part of being compassionate, is getting people where they really can thrive. If they're in the wrong place, having them move is more compassionate than not.
And keeping somebody in a spot where they're not thriving.
No, it's horrible. It's just unfair. But sometimes people are so afraid. Oh, but man, we don't want to change. We don't want to move them on. We don't want to let them go. Okay, but we're not doing many favors having them here where they aren't really going to do their best. And therefore, it goes home at night. They don't feel good about it.
Oh yeah, that's such great advice, and a lot of people don't think of it that way. And I so
Oh,
appreciate your book because it really brings a very honest conversation to what leadership can look like.
yep, yep. Thanks.
In your book, you mentioned that generosity must be given without expectation. How do leaders balance that with business performance goals?
Well, I have an easy answer for that. So I actually think the two go together. So that's how they balance. So let me, first, I think I've already said, a leader does have to get results. You don't get results, you're out of the job. It's as simple as that. And I was once talking with a guy named Joaquin Duato, CEO of Johnson and Johnson, J&J. He had said to me, he said, Joe, the leader does have to get outcomes. One can never forget that. But the sooner they learn to move past themselves as the center and tap into and unleash, is the word he used, all the human capabilities of those with whom they work, the sooner they will get to those outcomes. So, and I ascribe to that. The way to get the business performance goals is to have a team humming at the highest level they can. If they're all performing two-thirds, well, whatever, you're not going to get the goals you want. So you get that team performing, which is your role to help happen. You're going to drive the goals. Now, when I say without expectation, people can see through if you're pushing them just so you look good. You can see that. And that's your motivation is, oh, I want to get the next promotion. I want to look good. I want to be a star. They're going to smell it. They're going to feel it. And they're not going to be following you. If you take all the credit, if you never share, if you never, make sure others, and whatever, make sure others get rewarded for how they do really well, they'll feel it and they won't follow you and they won't deliver at their best levels and you won't hit the business goals. So that's the point on expectation, because the truth there is, of course, if you help them hum and they're humming, and your team does well, you will get benefits. That's just without saying it. It's just that doesn't have to be the primary goal. The primary goal is getting them to then it all happens for you.
One of the core principles you highlight is be curious, generous listening. How can leaders improve their listening skills in a fast paced environment?
Yeah, okay. I do think this is essential, and every executive I interviewed for my book all talked about, the power of asking questions and listening. So the main way you can improve your listening skills is by, even in a fast-paced environment, take the minute or two to ask a question. Marianne, what do you think about this? Marianne, what have you learned? Marianne, what do you know that I don't know? Marianne, what are you seeing? It's not that hard. You have the time to do it. And so that's the fastest way. Now, the important part, though, is you do have to be a little bit humble enough to understand that your people or somebody else knows something you don't know. If you think you know it all, well, you're not going to even ask the question, or you're not going to listen to the answer, which is now you're wasting time. And, not all of us, at some level, you reach the maturity, you understand you don't know it all. In which case, the power of asking those questions and truly listening to what they know that you don't will really help to get to better places. I used to say in my consulting world, when we're trying to help drive change in clients, I'd say the teams engage the skeptics and uncover the no's. They always say, well, the person that says no, they're just trying to be a pain, they're just blocking. I don't know, maybe 1 out of 1,000 people are trying to be a pain or blocking. The rest of them know something that you don't know. And if you don't know it when it comes time to make a difference, you're going to be caught surprised. So I think that's the best way, is to ask questions and then understand that you are putting together what you know and they know to get the best outcome. One other quote, Alex Gorsky, I don't know why I'm picking on J&J today. He was previous CEO of J&J. He once said at a meeting I attended, he said, the role of the leader is not to bring the best answer to the room. The role of the leader is to get the best answer out of the room, which I thought was pretty powerful. So your job is to inspire, motivate, and ask, and help the team to come up with the best damn answer, of which you're part of the team, of course.
I love that. That is such a
Isn't that a
great
great line?
that is a great line, and a lot of times leaders don't look at leading in that way, and that's why I have such great appreciation for your book, The Generous Leader, and also in your book, you have all these call to action segments that get people involved in looking at life a new way.
Yeah, that was funny. I'm a very action. You don't know me, but I'm a very action-oriented guy. And tell me why, as a strategy consultant, I don't know. But my daughter said, "Dad, this is great because you actually have at the end of each chapter something I can go do the next day." And she's in business. And I said, "Good, go do it. Go do it." But I will. I will.
That is great. How can small acts of generosity in the workplace lead to big cultural changes?
Okay, so I have a chapter, small acts, big impact. Really taking advantage of the generous moments, and it's so powerful. I mean, I can one way I always illustrate this is, you remember maybe when you were in kindergarten or first grade, and the star at the top of your page, even if your whatever work you did was good or bad, it didn't matter when you're 4, 5, and 6. That star meant a lot. It inspired and it motivated you, and it's a small act. My mom used to be a teacher. She would tell me, stick the stars on the top of the pages when I was like a kid. I said, okay, I can do that, Mom, when she was trying in grade. But so I think these small acts can have huge impact. I'm going to tell an interesting story. Scott Kirby, CEO of United Airlines, told me this story during after the George Floyd murder. His wife was on an airplane once they started flying again, and the captain came out to her and said, "Oh, Mrs. Kirby, it's so great to see you on my plane. I'm so thrilled you're here. I just got to tell you, I love your husband as the leader of this company, and I will be here forever, and I'm very committed." She goes, "Oh, why? What do you mean?" And it was a black female captain, and she said, "When George Floyd was murdered, your husband called every captain of color just to check in. He didn't tell us what to do. He didn't drill us on how we're feeling. He just wanted to check in and make sure we knew he and United were there for us." Now, that's not a teeny act, because you had to make probably not as many calls you might have liked, but a handful of calls. But he didn't have to prepare that much, just a call. Someone gave him the phone numbers, and it was huge impact in that organization. Now, that's a big small act. You can even, had another friend tell me, if she would tell her boss or manager, on a Thursday, "Hey, big weekend coming. My son's got a big soccer tournament. if on Monday or Tuesday that manager would take the 90 seconds, say, "Oh, by the way, how was a soccer tournament?" And of course, listen to the answer. It was hugely impactful to her. She said, "Wow, the fact the person remembered, they asked me about it." She said, "I will follow them, quote unquote, anywhere in the work environment." So these are simple things, very simple things to do that have huge cultural, benefit. Because of course they're going to quote unquote pay it forward, as they say, or pass it on. Or the other most simple one is keep track in your calendar your team's birthdays and wish them happy birthday. I mean, send them a note, just put in the subject line of email or in a text, happy birthday. Hope you have a great day. Takes no time, but man, people remember it. So this is what I mean by small acts. And obviously, those type of things coming from the leader consistently can have a huge impact on the culture.
I could see that. You're just making those personal connections. I mean, how empowering is that?
Yeah, and especially if we're talking about people who are bringing their human self and hoping to see some humanity from you in today's workforce. That's pretty powerful and simple.
Well, it seems that younger professionals are requiring that with the different jobs that they have.
Right.
They're looking for that connection. So, what advice would you give young professionals who want to be a generous leader but feel the pressure to conform to these outdated leadership models?
Yeah. Well, first off, I hope the outdated, although you'd say some public figures right now aren't really, they're not role modeling what I believe, but I hope the outdated models do become more and more outdated. I think your teams are going to require it. But I think, what a young professional can do, the simplest way to start, quite frankly, is just this whole listening that we talked about. If you as a leader ask questions and listen to the answer, you show massive respect to another person. It's not that hard, and you are better for it because now you know more information than you didn't know before. So it's just a very simple action item. And I don't think asking questions is uh, you know, that's not against the outdated leadership model. I mean, the part about, oh, I need to have all the answers, um, that's the old school. But even there, I mean, this is something, I believe people should bring their authentic self, maybe show some vulnerability at times. When they do, it, it unleashes others if they feel blocked. But a simple way to do that is just a simple, I don't know. I mean, a friend once told me, I asked him, well, when did you cross your line and show more vulnerability? And this was a black male. He said, oh my gosh, Joe, I was always afraid to say to my team, I didn't know. Because I'm supposed to be the boss. I'm supposed to know everything, blah, blah, blah. He said, but I'll tell you, if the team is talking and I'm in the room and I can see they're about to get stuck and ask me what direction, and I don't know the answer, he said, I'll leave the room before I'll get stuck with the question. How productive is that? I mean, now I just wasted time. And he said, one day I just realized this is ridiculous. So he crossed his line just a little bit and stayed in the room and said, well, guys, I don't know either. He said it was amazing, the energy. Oh, wait, you don't know? The boss doesn't know? None of us know? And this creative energy just burst because now all of a sudden they said, it's okay not to know. It's okay to be stuck. And how do we work together to figure it out? So, there's simple ways to even show humanity or authenticity, as simple as saying you don't know something. But that would be my quick do, ask questions and listen and maybe say, I don't know once in a while when you don't have the answer and enable your team to work with you to solve it.
That really just drives that teamwork where people are
Yeah.
more included. What would you like readers and our listeners to take away from your book?
Well, I think the main thing I want people to take away is that I do believe it's not just the young people are different. Work and life have blurred. The technology started it, COVID put it over the edge. And people need to bring their human self, want to bring their human self, are bringing their human self to work, and they want to see a human self from their leader. So, just bring some of your humanity, figure out whichever traits you want to share to your teams. They will appreciate it. They will grow. They'll probably deliver more than you expect them to deliver, which of course benefits you.
Joe, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about the generous leader?
Well, if you want to connect, I mean, I have a website. You can connect through there. But I think the easiest thing, I do check LinkedIn. I check the messages on LinkedIn. Since you can follow me on LinkedIn if you want, but you also can send me a message, and I will reach back out and I'll give you my email. We'll connect that way because I find that more effective.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Marianne. I really, really had a lot of fun.
Well, thank you, Joe. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your Nautilus award-winning book, The Generous Leader. Make sure to connect with Joe at his website, joedavis.com, for more information on his work and to be part of his community. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.